How well can you convert a stone-cold, largely visual, classic episode of a TV show into an audio adventure? Find out as we take a look at Big Finish's Prisoner box set number 2 story, I Met a Man Today. In 2017, Big Finish were back with their second set of reimaginings of the classic Patrick McGoohan TV series, The Prisoner. In their first box set, they made an uneasy balance between adapting and updating classic stories and producing their own new story, with the new story being the best material on the set. It was a bit disappointing when box set 2 was again 3 reimaginings and 1 new story. Even weirder, for some reason, they chose to rename 2 of the reimaginings and then chose to name their one original story with the name of another classic episode from the series. This time, we're looking at the first story, I Met a Man Today, which was adapted from Many Happy Returns. Prisoner fans will recognize Many Happy Returns as one of the outstanding episodes of the series, in which the first half is wordless, as number 6 wakes up to discover the village is deserted and spends weeks on his own, building and provisioning a raft, sailing to sea, overcoming gunrunners, and finally arriving on unknown shores, which proved to be the UK. It was a masterclass in visual storytelling. But how did Big Finish manage to work around that? They simply don't. They pick up the story after number 6 returns to his old flat in London and meets the new resident, Mrs. Butterworth. It's understandable that they would cut the escape, but it's deeply unsatisfying. To fill the time, they greatly expand the story of number 6 and Mrs. Butterworth, who has been transformed into a younger, more vulnerable widow and author who is clearly interested in the mystery of number 6, and perhaps transferring a bit of her late husband onto him. In general, the story runs very much along the lines of the original, with embellishments. But it is also here where you start to get the sense that the writer, Nick Briggs, thinks he's being more clever than the original. One of the flaws you could single out in the original TV series was that the capabilities of the village seemed to change from episode to episode, and number 6 would seem to forget what he had previously endured. This is an endemic problem to episodic science fiction programs of the era. The writers create something that is forgotten next week, or the long-term ramifications are not well thought through. With nearly half a century of hindsight, and the modern tendency to make stories more internally consistent from one episode to the next, this version lays it on a bit thick. In box set 1, in The Chimes of Big Ben, the high-tech update of the village meant that instead of a fake office substituting in for number 6's old workplace in London, they use a sort of Star Trek-like holosuite, perhaps even for the entire escape attempt, a trick almost indistinguishable from reality. Having escaped again, number 6 can't be sure he's really in London. Another aspect, also previously mentioned in box set 1, Professor Seltzman got a name check in the first story. The Seltzman story, which happened later in the series and was put together as a way for Patrick McGoohan to be away and film Ice Station Zebra, introduced a technology that, if real, would have the most appalling long-term consequences. They never came back to explore them again in the TV series, but by putting them up front and center in episode 1 of the audio adventures, we have to assume that Seltzman's machine exists and is in the hands of the village. And while we don't know how much number 6 knows about Seltzman's work, we do have good reason to believe he has at least an inkling of what it was. In short, number 6 can neither be sure that he is where he thinks he is, nor that he is talking to whom he thinks. Down that road lies madness, but perhaps that's the point. The hints, however, are laid on with a trowel in this version. Not only is this story missing the best part, the escape, but the expanded Mrs. Butterworth storyline is not very interesting and doesn't make up for it. Fans of the original will know there's a twist reveal of the new number 2 at the end of the story when number 6 is returned to the village. This version puts not only a new spin on it, but effectively makes the ending a cliffhanger, as the new number 2 continues on into the next story, something that did not happen in the original. Overall, I wish they had just skipped adapting this story. It doesn't raise my hopes for the next story, which is entitled Project 6, and is adapted from another of my favorite episodes, A, B, and C.